Now, about IMF negotiations, which is happening now, which has really become the big center of all of this Ofori Atta conversation. Now, here's Ken Ofori Atta and the IMF boss, so they will stay here as I talk about the IMF. But eternal economist, respected retired economist Kwame Pianim has granted an interview about the Ofori Atta situation, about the panacea, what it should be. He granted it to TV3, I believe. Here is the interview granted to TV3 by senior Kwame Pianim. This is what he said.
We don't have the foreign exchange reserves to support it. The IMF negotiation is not going well.
You know this for a fact?
I know this for a fact. It's not going. What the IMF is waiting for is a bold, credible pronouncement from the president, as he did over the COVID. The president said, I take full responsibility, I'm in charge, and I'm going to make sure that Ghanaians are protected from the COVID. We need a president to own the crisis, to come out and say, there is nothing that I will not do to stabilize the economy of Ghana, to stop this pressure, the economic crisis that is looming, and that there are no sacred cows. All the flagship programs will be looked at and reviewed for efficiency. School, the free school one, the feeding, we are going to look at all that. And I myself, I'm going to set the example. It's expenditures that need to be cut. No spooking traders by planting GRA officers in their shops. If somebody were to say they are going to plant someone in your living room, would you like that?
Is that a wrong policy? Is that a wrong policy?
It's wrong. Look, people are suffering. When people are suffering, that's not when you irritate them by starting things new. It's not going well, the negotiations. If the president, I know that, I mean, that's my business, to keep my ears open. I'm a Ghanaian, I'm interested in the economy, moving in the right direction. We are friends in Washington. So what I'm saying is that it's not going well, but they are looking for the president to come up as he came out on COVID. A credible message. I'm going to make sure we cut expenditures to stabilize the economy.
Have you had the opportunity to tell him this?
Yes, I mean, I send messages, I talk to him. You see, and then you need a credible messenger. Ken Ofori Atta is not a credible messenger. Somebody who didn't want to take in this route. How can we say he should lead it? First, I say that the hardships on Ghanaians is unprecedented.
Right.
So it should save Ghanaians additional misery by stepping down. The second part is that NPP has a reasonably good reputation as a good manager of the Ghanaian economy. And it's time that it stops so that the irreparable damage is not done to the reputation of NPP as good managers of the economy. That's the second one. And the third one is, if he doesn't go, and the president doesn't let him go, we risk, irreversibly dragging the president's legacy and his presidency into the gutters.
That's the view of a known critic of Ken Ofori Atta, but of course we love Mr. Kwame Pianim. He's a very distinguished economist. But he said a few things that show a bit of deficit as compared to what the IMF said. He said the IMF negotiations was not going well. That's quite alarming if he says that, because we all need to be alarmed about that. But did the IMF not issue a statement themselves about how the negotiations was going? Anyway, Mr. Kwame Pianim says President Akufo-Addo should speak to the nation as he did with COVID, and our understanding, as published by the Minister of Information, is that the president will be speaking on Sunday. So we wait to hear what he says. I think before the president talks to us, he's talking to his cabinet in Buri, and then he'll speak to the rest of the nation, I believe, at the weekend, as has been published. But so that will satisfy Kwame Pianim's first point. The second point is that the negotiations are not going well. Let's go to the touch screen and see what the IMF itself said. Now, there's a message issued by the IMF after the negotiations with Ghana. The Washington, D.C. International Monetary Fund team, led by Stephanie Rode, met during October 11 to 19th in Washington, D.C. with Finance Minister Ofori Atta, Bank of Ghana Governor Addison, and their teams to continue discussions on a possible IMF-supported program. At the conclusion of the meeting, Mr. Rude issued the following statement, quote, "The Ghanaian delegation and the IMF staff had very fruitful discussions on the authorities' post-COVID program for economic growth and associated policies and reforms that could be supported by a new IMF arrangement." So that's what the IMF said. Mr. Kwame Pianim says the negotiations are not going well. I'm wondering why the reporter did not confront him with the IMF statement, because the IMF statement came straightforward after the meeting with the Ghanaian delegation, and they name Ofori Atta in the statement and the governor of the Bank of Ghana, and they say, the quotation is that the Ghanaian delegation and the IMF staff had very fruitful discussions on the authorities' post-COVID program for economic growth and associated policies and reforms that could be supported by a new IMF arrangement. The statement goes on and the quotation continues. "We, that's the IMF and Ghana, made good progress in identifying specific policies that will restore macroeconomic stability and lay the foundations for stronger and more inclusive growth. The IMF team and the Ghanaian authorities remain fully committed to reaching agreement on a framework and policies for an IMF-supported program as soon as feasible. Discussions will continue in the weeks ahead with a follow-up mission to take place expeditiously, I believe, in Ghana." All right, so that's the IMF statement. So the IMF statement uses words like "we made good progress" and "it was fruitful." So Mr. Kwame Pianim's testimony is not borne out by the IMF statement, unless, of course, and unlikely that he suspects that the IMF statement is not honest. I don't think he suspects that. I don't think any of us suspects that. This is the IMF statement, and this is the IMF boss, Christinala Georgieva, and Ken Ofori Atta, the finance minister, but two of them doing the negotiations. She was in Ghana to see the vice presidents and all of that. So Kwame Pianim's situation is not borne out. What we are hearing, though, about the IMF situation is that the IMF is particularly concerned that Ghana's revenue mobilization should show up not as an event. Say we go sell something like in the Kufuor time, they sold Vodafone for 800 million and had 800 million come into the economy. And we have some of those plans. There are some key assets that can be translated into cash and all of that. But from what we are hearing, the IMF is saying to Ghana that, no, that's not enough. This is your one-off 1 billion. No, we want a systematic growth of revenue such that the revenue mobilization in Ghana will not be 14% of GDP, which is what it is today.